is Andrew with DMC Sidecars, and today I'm going to show you guys how to put an Indian Tomahawk frame to our 2015 Indian motorcycle. We already have the frame slightly hooked up to the motorcycle with our lower mounts. Now I'm going to show you how we did that. We first want to start out with setting the preload on the motorcycle. Now there's several ways to do that. We have a nice ramp we put the motorcycle on, as you can see in the video, that we drive the motorcycle up on. We want to level the motorcycle to the ground, and we also want to preload the suspension on the bike to the weight of the rider that's going to be riding the motorcycle. So the first thing you want to do, once it's preloaded and leveled up, we want to get the sidecar level to the ground. So if your whole setup is on the ground, your tire being on the ground and the motorcycle being on the ground, unlike what we have here with these ramps that we've built custom in-house, is you want to level the frame. And how you do that, you can stick some jacks under the frame to get the frame level to the ground. It needs to be level this way and it needs to be level this way. To level the frame, we're going to use two levels. We're going to set one level going this way and the other level on this crossbar on the frame going this way. Now we're going to level the frame as best we can this way and that way to the ground, so we can butt it up next to the motorcycle and everything works out great. So once that's done, you're going to install your front mount and your rear boss and clamp. Your front mount on this particular application, we built it fixed. So it's not two pieces like most of our other sidecar mounting hardware. This mount right here will go all the way in until the weld on the mount hits the tube on the frame, as you can see here. Now that will set your toe for the front of your motorcycle. That's where we want it. That's how close we want it to the sidecar. There's also a hind joint that we thread in here, which will come pre-threaded into the mounting hardware with about 3 to 4 threads showing with the jam nut tight. As you can see, I didn't tighten any of the jam nuts yet because I wanted to show you guys this. So that's how it will set up. Now, there's two possible ways that with this mounting application, it can be leaned in or out. Now, with this mount right here, we want this mount, as you can see, the 1-inch rectangle tubing, we want it leaned in like this, and that sets your wheel lead. With it leaned in like it is shown, and the levels on the frame compared to the motorcycle being leveled on the ground, this will set just about the perfect wheel lead that you need for your application. Now, after we get that front mount hooked up, we hook up the rear mount. This is a boss and clamp setup. This being the clamp that slides into the frame, this being the boss. Now we want to go ahead and slide the clamp into the frame, and then we'll attach our boss with our hind joint threaded onto it, just like the front, with about 3 or 4 threads sticking out past the jam nut, as you can see. To set the toe on this application, we use some straight edges. You can use anything that you can possibly find that's straight and long enough to clear the front wheel tire of the motorcycle. We use some aluminum. So what we want to do is we want to slide these up against the tire so they're touching both sides of the tire. We also lift this up on blocks again because we're not on the ground, so our blocks are a little bit taller. We come over here and we want to do the same thing with this straight edge. But we only want to use the rear tire, because if the front and the rear tire aren't the same width, it'll throw you way off on your toe. So once this is securely up against the rear tire, touching two sides of the tire, front and back, we want to grab a tape measure. We want to take a measurement from the front of the straight edge to this side of the straight edge. And then we want to come to the back of the straight edge to this side of the straight edge. And we want to make sure that our toe is set so the sidecar wheel is tilted in about 7/8 of an inch. It can be anywhere from 3/4 to an inch, and you're pretty well in the ballpark. We can then go ahead and tighten up our boss and clamp setup we have here. Now after you had pushed your front mount all the way in. We have 2 bolts pinching the pinch clamp to hold that on. And we have 2 bolts back here pinching the pinch clamp to hold the clamp on. Now, those will help you set your toe if you keep at least the rear one loose while you're doing this application. So then we just go ahead and snug those up, which we already have, and then you can go ahead and tighten this up as long as your boss is fairly straight with the clevis with the bolt in it there. Once you have your front mount tightened and your rear clamp and boss tightened, and it's in the ballpark range of 3/4 of an inch to an inch, we can fine tune that to where you want it to get closer to that 1 inch to 7/8 range by coming down here, removing the bolt going through the boss and the heim joint into the clevis. We'll then be able to slide your sidecar frame away, because we are on a heim joint in the front, so it is adjustable. So after everything is tightened, it still will move, and everything will still be lined up fine. Now we can take this heim joint here, we'll get closer to see. I can rotate this out, and that'll give me more toe in. I can rotate it in, and that'll give me less toe. Now you can fine adjust with this, and I highly recommend it because it's very difficult to just adjust with your toe using the boss and clamp setup. So get everything tightened once it's within an inch, then you can fine adjust by just twisting the heim joint, sticking it back in, replacing the bolt and the nut, and then remeasuring until you have it right at that 7/8 to an inch mark. Before installing your upper struts, you need to install the hardware provided into the frame. Now these are our strut tubes that hold our eyes. Now this hardware comes to you put together, and how we do this, we put the bolt up with the high collar lock washer on it through the strut tubes, and then we tighten the eye bolt on top of the bolt. Now I'm going to keep this loose, just hand tight, for the purpose of installation with the strut, because it's much easier when you have adjustment in this to hook up your strut. We're going to go ahead and set our upper struts. Now we have a curved strut and a straight strut for this application. The curved strut will go in the front. We preset these struts, so they should come very close to lining up for you. You may need to adjust them slightly. So to adjust these struts so they come in and out, you just loosen the jam nut, twist it out, or twist it in. Okay? Now the threads of the all thread going into the curved strut need to be going down like shown. That way you don't get any water inside there and the all thread will rust and things start to rust over time. So I have that pointing down. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to try to line these up as best I can here. And these need to be able to rotate. Then you're going to install the hardware provided. See how I can rotate this still to line it up with the eye better. To come in with the eye bolt, it loosens it up, turning it in, just until my holes line up so it fits together effortlessly. You don't want to have to cram these bolts in, because once your frame is level and your bike is where it needs to be, these should just slide right in. You don't want any force on them. Just like that. And you see my eyes are nice and flat with each other up here and down here. So now that that is installed, I can put the lock nuts on. I can securely tighten them, and then I can come down here, I can tighten up this bolt very securely, and I can make sure this is all the way tight against the frame. Now this needs to be extremely tight up against the frame. So when you're adjusting this, you can remove it. You see the angle that it needs to be at if this is still loose, which in this video this is tight because I've preset it. Tighten it very, very tight. You don't want to be able to move this back and forth. But make sure when you're tightening it, you end up back in this position so this lays flat. Just like that, goes together effortlessly. Now with the installation of the rear strut, it's just as simple as the front, except this strut is straight. We also want the all thread to be pointing down towards the frame. We want to make sure that this is tight, but loose enough that we can still turn it to rotate it if we need to. And it does have a jam nut on it. Find the best position that works. Now you can flip flop side to side, whatever works to get the eyes flat with each other. I'm going to go ahead and put my upper bolt in. Put my nut on, because I know it's going to line up now. Come down here to the bottom. Check to make sure my holes line up, which they do. Effortlessly slides together. Make sure everything is very tight. And always use the lock nuts. Once everything is installed, you always want to go back and check all your bolts and jam nuts to make sure they are securely tight. Always check your jam nuts. They're very important to be tightened up against the strut tube, not the eye. Always tighten them against the strut tube as shown. Same with the front. Just like that. And these, make sure everything is securely tightened.
When your frame arrives at your home, your brake line will be ran all the way to the clamp already. To finish the connection to the lower front mount, you'll have to install one P-clamp into a pre-drilled hole, and then also one zip tie to hold the brake line on the lower arm. To connect your master cylinder quick connect adapter, you just remove the stock banjo bolt, add our supplied double banjo bolt and quick connector to the stock master cylinder, and then your quick connect line will simply pop right in place. Now make sure you zip tie to the top of the lower arm, because that way the cable will not hang down on the road and catch any obstructions. Mounting our tilt switch, we simply use the bolt holes that are mounted on our clutch, and we run our tilt switch wire down the handlebar, under the gas tank, under the seat right here. Now we need to remove the computer to plug in the ground and the positive. To remove the computer, you have to use a 5mm wrench to undo one bolt in the back, and then the computer lifts and tilts out of place, exposing the battery. Your tilt switch positive negative can connect to the battery positive with the red wire and the negative with the white wire. Then you simply connect your trim bullet connectors with the colors corresponding. And then you're ready to check your tilt. If the up position on your tilt switch lowers the tilt and the lower raises the tilt, you're going to want to switch these two wires. Just simply switch the purple and pink wires until your switch works in the correct direction desired. Alright, connecting your tilt wires and your taillight wires from your sidecar, the wiring is pre-connected all the way to the strut end. Once your bike is connected to the sidecar, you'll have to connect the rest of the wires using zip ties up the strut and all the way to under the seat where the wiring is finally connected. Connecting our fender taillight adapter, you first have to disconnect the taillight switch on the bike. It's simple, it just comes right apart. Our adapter slips right in the middle of these two, and they can only plug in one way, so it makes it very easy to connect. Once those are connected, you have to tuck them into the bike, and we'll have to connect our ground wire to our negative terminal on our battery. To do this, you don't have to remove the terminal since these are press-in connectors. You can simply loosen the bolt and push the connector in and then retighten the bolt. Now that we're done with that, we can put our computer back over the battery cover. Once again, we use our single bolt to tighten down the battery cover and computer over the battery. Now that that's done, we just have to tuck our wires away so they're not exposed. These can be zip tied down to the pre-existing wire connector.